And you are live.
Welcome to the 18 December 2023 meeting of the Annapolis Transportation Board. And my special thanks to all of you for attending in this busiest of seasons. I know you got lots of things going on in your lives, so we'll try to be concise and productive so you can get back to those things that are seasonal and important to you. One of the first things that I would like to do is to ask to alter the agenda in the following way. We have some visitors tonight, and out of deference to them, I'd like to alter the agenda to put them up front so that they can say their piece and not be bothered by the administrivia that we also deal with in these meetings. Without objection, I will do that, and the best way of doing that is to turn to Hugh Hayes, who will introduce them and kick off this portion of the meeting.
Hey, so yeah, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Can everyone see the PowerPoint presentation?
Not yet. Yes, there we go.
Okay. So we have some people from MDOT with us tonight to talk about the bike project that's going along the United States Naval Academy Bridge. And I wanted to talk for 2 seconds before we hand it over to them to give us a presentation on an update on the project of where it stands today. So I want to talk a little bit about why this project is important to us and regionally and locally, and some of the things that we wanted to see in the project. So regionally, you guys have probably seen this map before by Bike AAA, showing the Anne Arundel County Trail Network and what exists today and what is in progress and what's planned. And you can see that in a couple years, pretty much this whole entire map will be done, and there will be a separated shared use trail from Annapolis to Baltimore, or Annapolis to Odenton, and then down all the way to Washington, D.C. The only problem is that sort of that bottom right corner near Annapolis, where it just is a dash line saying bike lanes that we're going to talk about today. Why this locally is so important to us is Annapolis investing in a bike network locally, and this 450 segment really ties into almost everything that Annapolis is doing. From the 450 segment, there's going to be a section of trail going from right here to the Naval Academy Stadium. Then there's the College Creek connector that comes off of the 450 segment that takes you into downtown. And then from there, there's the West East Express trail that will take you from Odenton to Parole, and then all the way to Washington, D.C. And then Annapolis is very close to the BNA trail, but today it's very hard to get to the actual BNA trail. It's not very safe route. But thankfully, Anne Arundel County is planning on the east side of the bridge a shared use path that will connect where the terminus is today. And then also the Navy is thinking about doing something at the 648 segment, connecting their base on the other side of the Severn River to the Naval Academy. So from the regional to the local, this segment of the 450 is vitally important to everything we're doing, and it would be a huge missing link if it wasn't there. So the two things that we were looking for in this project was, one, that the scope of the project included the bridge itself, and two, because of the speed limit on the bridge of 40 miles an hour, we were looking for this to be a protected shared use path on the bridge itself. According to the National Traffic Safety Board, at 40 miles per hour, there is a 85% chance of a fatality happening. And there's sections of this that go downhill, so people are much likely going even faster than 40 miles an hour. So we don't really believe that flex posts alone would really do a lot of protection from a car veering off the path and into the bike lane. And most likely if that was to happen, it would end up in a fatality. So the second thing that we were looking for, besides this scope of the project, including the bridge itself, was something with a higher level of protection and a hardened barrier, something like in the picture here, where it's a sort of a tall curb. So I'll sort of hand it over to you guys now to give us an update on the project. Then we can sort of go from there and do a little Q&A afterwards, if that works for you guys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll touch on all those things that you're asking for there. And yeah, definitely have time for some questions, and you guys can voice your opinions and concerns after I give my little presentation here. So, I'm Matt Knowles. I'm with SHA. I'm the project manager for this project. I'm joined by Luis Gonzalez, who's the assistant division chief for ICD. And give me a second here, and I will share my screen. Luis, is there anything you want to say before I pull this up, or you're pretty good?
If I can unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Luis Gonzalez, Assistant Division Chief for the Innovative Contracting Division and Fund Manager for Fund 88, which this project is under. To us, this is a pretty important project. We've been investing a lot of resources on it. I believe Zoe talked about this project in one of your last meetings. And we are just trying to make sure that we provide the safest accommodations we can within the constraints that we have. We're not saying that any ideas are bad. In our point, we want to put as many as the safest infrastructure that we can, but we are also constrained with what's existing out there. So I'm going to let Matt obviously present what we are able to do so far, but overall, I just want to make sure that everyone here understands we're all working towards the same goal to just provide safe infrastructure for everyone.
Just trying to figure out if I'm sharing the right screen. If I need to switch them. Do you guys see it now, or do you see like my screen with the?
Yeah, your title slides up, Matt.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm used to Teams, not Zoom.
Um,
We are seeing the present. We're seeing the prevent.
Okay, wrong one. Okay.
Interview. Yeah.
Can you
Gotcha.
full screen it?
Gotcha.
I think if you go to that where you were,
yeah,
the display settings, and
Oh.
swap the screens,
Click the
you
wrong
should
thing.
be good.
Run away.
Sorry, guys. Hold on a second.
There you go.
Is it working now, or no?
Yeah, but can you full screen it?
How about now?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Sorry about that. So you can see it's the Maryland 450 project from the College Creek Bridge to the U.S. Naval Academy Bridge. Also, there's a section along Maryland 435 from King George Street to Taylor Ave. Sorry, there's Taylor Ave right there if anybody's not familiar. King George Street here. So here's a little section of 435 that's also part of this project. As I said, I'm Matt Knowles. My email is at the bottom of this slide. If anybody has any questions afterwards that would like to shoot me an email, please feel free. So project overview. Obviously, we know this is in Anne Arundel County. The project limits we just went over. And I just want to kind of touch on this. You know, these are the approved limits thus far. You know, we'll talk about some options for including the Naval Academy Bridge as well as some improvements to the College Creek Bridge that we'll see here shortly. Improvements that you can expect to see in this project: new bike and ped facilities, sidewalk reconstruction, stormwater management and drainage, landscaping, sounding and marking improvements, and pedestrian signal upgrades. Luis mentioned that this was under, you know, this falls under the programmatic objective statement for Fund 78 and 80. I'm sorry, 79 and 88. So what does that mean? That means we're trying to accommodate bicycles and ADA pedestrian facilities along this project. We want to improve any existing sidewalk segments, ramps, crosswalks in the area that do not meet ADA guidelines. We want to serve the current pedestrian cyclist demand as well as preparing for a volume increase in the future. And we'd be hoping to enhance the trail network and community connectivity. something I think Hugh touched on at the beginning of this meeting. Hopefully we connect Annapolis to Crownsville, Odenton, Arundel Mills, all the surrounding areas. He also mentioned that this corridor is part of a larger spine of bicycle networks, including the East Coast Highway, East Coast Greenway, American Discovery Trail, and Grand History Trail. And these improvements would also help bridge the gap between the B&A Trail, the South Shore Trail, and the U.S. Naval Academy Stadium Trail, as well as the proposed College Creek connector. And finally, we'd also want to address any known safety issues for all vulnerable users. Talk about funding real quick. This project is fully designed, fully funded for design. It has federal funds approved, as well as Anne Arundel County match. And it is planned, funding is planned for construction, which means it's considered within the program budget. We just would have to get NEPA approval to access those federal funds. Here's a quick graphic of the project limits. Here's Taylor Ave, College Creek Bridge, Naval Academy Bridge. Again, these are the current approved project limits, as I stated before. We're going to see the alternatives that go beyond these limits to make improvements to both bridges. And while we're looking at these alternatives, any changes that were made to the project limits would need to be cleared by the administration. And that determination would happen at 30% design milestone, which we are working towards. And that decision would be based on the feasibility of the design as well as the cost of the alternatives. I just want to touch on some existing conditions, most of which you're probably already aware of. But this is considered an urban center, which means we want to focus on safety, accessibility, and quality of service. The posted speed limit through the limits is 30 miles per hour. I know Hugh said over the bridge it is 40 miles an hour. Maryland 450 has existing sidewalk on both sides, which would be upgraded and improved to meet ADA standards. Maryland 435 has sidewalk only eastbound direction, and most of that sidewalk is not ADA compliant. There are 2 bus stops along this route which do not meet ADA standards, which we brought up to meet those guidelines. And while there is some existing bike lane signs on both of these roadways, there's no shoulder or bike lanes connecting them all. So there's not like a congruent bike travel way for anyone. Here's just a quick list of areas of interest around the project that were taken into consideration during design. Obviously, there's a strong U.S. Naval Academy community presence around the project, but there's also a number of other features and places around the area that could help get connected through this project. Neighborhoods, swimming pools, schools, the courts, and downtown Annapolis. So when we started this, we had a number of different alternatives that we were looking at. SHA produced a number of alternatives that were sent out for comment from the county and the city. And based on those comments, we revised it down to 2 alternatives to examine, as well as 2 alternatives that proposed by the city of Annapolis, which expanded on the original project limits to include the Naval Academy Bridge and the College Creek Bridge. These were the 2 alternatives that were examined, that were proposed by SHA and examined. Alternative 1 was a combination of shared use path from King George up to the U.S. Naval Academy Bridge. The rest of the project limits was a combination of bike lanes and sidewalks, both along Maryland 435, King George, and along this side of Maryland 450 up to the Naval Academy Bridge. Alternative 2 was just sidewalks and bike lanes, no shared use path. And then these are the 2 proposed alternatives from the city of Annapolis. Proposal 1 was shared use path everywhere on both sides of Maryland 450 and along one side of Maryland 435. Proposal number 2 was mostly shared use path, but it was a combination of shared use path and sidewalk, as well as bike lanes over the College Creek Bridge and a two-way separated bike lane along the U.S. Naval Academy Bridge. So there was an analysis done of those 4 alternatives.
Excuse
Looking
me,
at- yeah,
I
sure, go
wondered
ahead.
if I could ask you.
Sure.
It's clear to some of us, but perhaps not to all of us,
Mhm.
what the actual definition of a shared use path is. Which of these categories include actual physical separation and protection for the cyclist, and which categories do not?
You mean of the alternatives that are proposed
Exactly,
in our design?
yes.
So all these shared use paths along 435, 450, and 450 here would all be above a curb. There would be a curb. These would not be along the roadway.
Mhm.
So that's for this proposal that we'd be looking at here, this alternative proposed by the city.
And the blue portion breaks
The
into,
blue portion would be a two-way bike lane. I have a typical section that I'll show here in a second. That would show the flexible delineators that were proposed that Hugh touched on earlier.
right, and that's the one we are probably going to give
Sure.
you some pushback on. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
understood. Yep. So these are the 2 alternatives after the analysis was done, looking at level of service, level of comfort, construction cost, utility impacts, retaining walls, and stormwater management requirements. We went with SHA alternative 2, which was a combination of sidewalk and bike lanes throughout the project limits. And then the city proposal number 2, which we just talked about, was shared use path along this side of Maryland 435, as well down King George, and then a shared use path along 450 up to the Naval Academy Bridge, which would tie into a proposed two-way bike lane. Sidewalks would be proposed along the other side of Maryland 450 down to the College Creek Bridge, and there would be bike lanes along the College Creek Bridge as well. And I have typical sections to show what that would look like. So along the U.S. Naval Academy Bridge, or maybe I should start with the College Creek Bridge, because I'm sure Naval Academy Bridge will have some talking points. College Creek Bridge, right now we have 4-foot sidewalks on 4-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot sidewalk with 15-foot travel lanes. Our proposal would be to take 4 feet of the travel lane and propose a bike lane in both directions. And that would just be restriping the roadway here. The U.S. Naval Academy Bridge, you can see the layout here is 5-foot sidewalks elevated with a 8-foot bike lane.
Right,
211.
I'm
Sure,
sorry.
go ahead.
So the bottom is the MDOT proposal and the top is the city. It's not clear to me here.
Sorry, this is proposal 2. This was the city. That
I'm sorry.
was
So one is the Naval Academy Bridge and one is, yep, sorry.
yeah. So
They're
these
both
are both for
proposal
proposal
2,
number
which
2.
is-
So I should have said that more
So
clearly.
that's the city proposal, Matt?
You're correct. Yeah, I'm sorry. The other alternative that we're looking at would tie into the existing conditions at the bridge for the Naval Academy Bridge.
But the one you're showing, since they're both alternative 2 or proposal 2, is the city or the MDOT? Sorry.
Well, SHA is developing this design. It was a proposal by the city of Annapolis.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another question.
Mhm.
Have you considered on the Naval Academy Bridge and perhaps also for College Creek Bridge, giving up one of the sidewalks to construct a fully separated shared use path, which has physical barriers for both pedestrians and cyclists?
So I don't think we looked at eliminating the sidewalk altogether, partially because there's sidewalk already existing on this side of 450. I don't know that we'd have to eliminate this sidewalk altogether so people wouldn't get stuck over here once they got to the base of the bridge. We did talk about a crossing at the bridge, but that I don't think that was really something really that made sense. A line of sight standpoint coming down the bridge, it just wouldn't be a safe place for people to cross if we were to do something like that.
Well, people are going to cross, whether it's provided by one or two sidewalks. So it just seems to me that the option of giving up one of the sidewalks in order to be able to put a good, robust, perfectly safe shared use path seems sensible as
So
an
we-
option.
I can talk about that a little bit. I mean, we did evaluate many scenarios where we would look at shared use path on one side, bicycle lanes and sidewalks. We did evaluate multiples, but the problem we have is if you were to try to do that strategy of just putting shared use path, you will be hitting connectivity issues and you will be creating additional crossing points that will create conflicts with pedestrians. So we didn't think that alternative was a viable one. I mean, here you have to, like, you're constrained in space. So if you try to make things ideal for bicyclists, you're potentially making things more difficult for pedestrians. So you kind of have to balance here. And when we did I think it was up to 7 alternatives, we looked at almost every scenario, like sacrificing here and there. And these alternatives, that the ones that we landed seem to be the best ones of the sacrifices that you have to make in this area. These were the best ones that we could come up with.
Another thing to add is we do have one constraint. Along this bridge, we need to provide a 32-foot roadway clear width along this bridge. So that's why we were proposing, you can see, you can do the math here, 4, 11, 11, and 4 doesn't equal 32. That's only 30 feet. So the reason we're using the flexible delineators was because they're not a hard barrier. We were allowed with a waiver to use part of this bike lane if there were an emergency to reach that 32-foot roadway clear width. That's why we could not propose a hard barrier in this layout. It would only give us a 30-foot roadway clear width.
Where does that requirement come from?
I can find exactly where that's from. We asked our office of structures.
That's an AASHTO requirement, is my understanding, that.
Yeah, I just don't know the name of the where he pulled that from.
Yeah, my understanding was that is the AASHTO bridge portion that they have the minimum amounts of clearances that they have to have in bridges. So if we don't meet that minimum amount from a bridge standpoint, you have to submit for a waiver that includes justifying why you cannot meet that width, and then you would have to present it to Federal Highway and basically make a case as to how are you mitigating for the lack of space that you're providing for vehicles, because in emergency situations you need to have space there for emergency vehicles to get around.
Again, giving up one of the sidewalks would relax that constraint.
Well, yeah, that's something that we didn't. Well, actually, I don't.
We did. We
Did
did.
evaluate that now?
Yeah, so we did have we did look at removing. We were thinking about what if we remove this sidewalk here and then made a fully elevated shared use path in this space. However, the cost of removing the sidewalk, putting in a full shared use path, as well as the effects on the drainage, because I think a lot of the roadway drains this way, all of those costs would nearly double the cost of this project. So that was why we kind of went away from that option. We have a fixed budget for this, and this was, that budget was for the original limits that I spoke about. So we were going beyond the limits of our original project to include this, and the removal of the sidewalk and the placing of the new shared use path on the bridge was almost double the cost of the rest of the project. And there was also some concerns about adding the additional weight all to one side of the bridge. That there would have had to be some further analysis there. And we have had some discussions. We had a meeting on Tuesday, I think it was, and there is some available funding out there for projects like this. And if that funding could be available to us, that's something that we definitely could explore more. We can design. I think we talked about designing for a scenario like that. But the funding for construction is something that would still need to be made available. I think from a design standpoint, that is something that we can look at further, see if there's, see what the effects on the drainage will be, and see, clear what kind of impacts adding all of the weight to one side of the bridge would be. Is that something that's acceptable as well? But from a construction standpoint, there would be, we would need to find more funding for that.
Yeah, so it's not just converting one side of the roadway into a shared use path, right? We would have to potentially remove pavement on the other side, or concrete, convert some of that into actual travel lane where the existing sidewalk is.
Yes.
So all of that, like making all those modifications into a structure, we would have to evaluate. And the funding that, Matt, you're referring to, I believe, was a grant program that was going to be looked into by the county. So that's something that we would have to look more in depth, because what I was telling Marguerite was that I'm not sure if that funding is something that we can overlap with capital funding that the state is using. So that would be another discussion that would have to occur, because sometimes those grants are exclusive from capital programs. I think Zoe has her hands up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see.
Yeah, Matt, I was also going to mention, I think we discussed on our meeting last week that you may also have to look at the structural integrity of the bridge if we were going to, jackhammer out and remove one of the sidewalks. That removal of concrete could also, just due to the force of that, would need to be looked at as well.
Yeah, I mean, that would all go into removing the sidewalk. We'd have to see, we'd really have to sit down with structures and see what kind of impacts that would have.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple hurdles. Sounds like there's willingness to continue looking at this, but hurdles in terms of, the impacts on the structural integrity of the bridge, the AASHTO, standards for roadway width, as well as, some potential additional cost.
Exactly.
And how to have that, get that funded. I think that the majority of the folks on the, I wear two hats tonight. I represent the Naval Academy on the interagency work group that's been working on this project for almost 4 years. I also sit on the city's transportation board, but I think that the sentiment is, and I think you heard it this morning, just a few minutes ago from Luis, is that, we don't want this piece of the project to slow down necessarily, or prevent us from making progress on the other segment. Not saying that there's not some things I think everybody wants to focus in on this, but we have been trying to sort of prioritize and pursue those aspects of this project that we can see some progress, or at the end, light at the end of the tunnel on. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Matt, would you mind
Yep.
describing, and it might be part of what's coming up anyway, but would you mind describing how the access is for the two-way bike lane at the Naval Academy Bridge? On your previous slide, you show what appear to be two new cross points at the intersection of 450 and 435.
Right here?
Yeah, so what happens there? Like if I'm on 435 eastbound heading to cross the bridge, will there be new lights or signals?
Sure, new striping, new ramps. For this entire intersection, yeah. So you're saying if you were coming down this way and you come to this intersection, how do you get over to here and up
Yeah, I mean,
and out?
will there be changes to the light signals or?
Sure. To the traffic signals themselves.
I mean, because if I'm going
Timing wise,
eastbound and the lane is on the north side, I have to cross traffic twice, right?
you'd have to cross here and then here. Yes, you'd have to, right. You have to cross King George and then 450 going this way.
And then, and I don't want to get too far ahead.
Mhm.
And then on the other side of Naval Academy Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
is the intent to have a two-way path all the way to Bolter's Way or whatever that road is that connects to the bottom of the B&A Trail?
So that would not be part of this project. That would be a separate project for sure. That'd be well outside the scope of our project.
So
I
what
know that's
happens
something that's
there?
being looked at, but
So so would that just be counterflow at that point, or would I be expected to cross back over to get eastbound again on the other side of the bridge?
yes, you would be crossing over
Okay.
and go along the existing side. I guess there's a shoulder there, right? That you use. I don't think I have a slide that shows that, but I know what you're talking about. I know we have a crossing
Yeah,
proposed.
I can add to that. I mean, so we're not at 30% yet. So the
Mhm.
traffic signal design has not yet started.
Mhm.
Typically in these projects, we first try to get the geometrics done, and then after we have the geometrics down, the traffic signal design starts, and that's when you get into details as to APS, CPS signal equipment that are going to be installed. Overall, I think when we've talked about this, I'm not going to say northern, is that north or
Yeah,
east?
kind of north.
Northeastern side?
Mhm.
There's going to have to be an evaluation of how the transition goes in there. We have to do signal equipment so that you can cross and be able to go back to the two-way routes. You're going to have bike lanes. Currently, I think there's bike lanes on each side, all the way up to Bolter's Way. So we would have to transition that there and come up with a signal design that would allow that in striping to allow that transition to occur. But a future project where you would upgrade the share use path on the left side of the road, I'm using here left because of the drawing, but all the way up to Bolter's Way is something that would have to be evaluated in the future because it's just that's a whole nother project of its own. It's a very long segment.
I'm just concerned. I mean, the obvious thing has already been mentioned is that on the bridge and before and after the bridge, the speed limits for cars and the actual speeds driven, well, the same is true for bicycles. So if you have a two-way path on the north side that ends at the bottom of that, where cyclists will be going 30 plus miles an hour, even your average recreational cyclist will gather that much speed and momentum on the way down. And if they have to make a hard stop and then cross again 2 lanes of traffic, cross the bridge traffic and then cross at the bottom of 648 or where 648 continues there, that seems like a heavy lift for a recreational cyclist or a pedestrian, to be honest. I run that. I both ride and run the bridge frequently, and just crossing it, as you probably know, is very, very hazardous on foot. At both the King George 450 intersection and at the bottom of the north side of the bridge, northeast.
Yeah, I think we recognize that. It's challenging to modify existing infrastructure to make it fit the current use that we need. I mean, what we want to do is we try to thread the needle here and try to get as much as we can within the constraints that we have. And we recognize that that portion is something that we're going to have to tackle sooner rather than later. But for this project, I think what we need to make sure is that we keep the scope constrained so that we're able to make progress. We don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good in this situation. I mean, it's not going to be a perfect solution that's going to fit perfectly, but it's a start that allows us to build to something better in the future.
One thing just before we get off this slide, I thought I had saw one variation of the city's proposal where that shared use path along the 450 extended past like George a little bit, so that you wouldn't have two transitions at 435 and you would just have one to continue going south on King George, or if you wanted to go sort of towards like Taylor Avenue.
Are you talking about this slide now that I have up?
Yeah, but you see how you have two crossings at 435 and 450. There was one where the top portion extended just a little bit more, so you could go south and continue on, or you could go towards like the Navy Stadium. I thought I had seen that. Maybe not.
I don't.
I mean, like I'd seen it. Sorry.
I think these were the only two proposed by the city.
Okay. Is it possible to do that? I feel like it's a slight variation, but then you don't have two crossings; you only have one.
Vince brought it up, and you and Vince are both right. That would make a lot of sense. There is a big hill there, though, but that would make a lot of sense rather than having to cross the street twice.
If it just extended,
you're talking about extending this.
No, not even just
No.
10 feet further, and then cross south instead of crossing south where it is right now.
So there's no, you're not going south and then west. Is that what you're saying, Hugh?
Yeah. Just you either go just go south. You don't have to cross the.
There's the two crosswalks that are shown make an L in the drawing. You're saying if there's two north-south crossings, right?
That L should just be flipped to the other corner.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You want this? Oh, I know it's hard to see with the cursor, but over here.
Yeah. So then you can. Yeah.
Which
then you
makes
don't
a
have to
lot
cross
of
the
sense
street
because-
twice.
Right. And when you see the left turn only and those people that typically work for the academy screaming to get through that intersection to get to work in the morning, there is quite a bit of left turn happening there. And yeah, if you eliminated that one cross and made it on the far side of the light, that probably would be a large safety enhancement.
Because whether you're coming from the Growls or from the bridge, you're going to have to cross the street twice the way you have it. But if you do it the way they're talking about, you'd only have to cross the street once.
You're moving it 10 feet further and then eliminating the entire crossing.
Right. The other side of the light.
Further west of the light.
Yeah.
50 feet.
Yeah.
So the majority of the traffic that's coming west from 450 and taking that left turn to get into town, which is an enormous amount of traffic, you would not interfere with that, and you would eliminate a safety issue quite a bit. Yep.
Luis, is there any reason you could think that we wouldn't want to do that? The cross, yeah. I mean,
I don't see any reason why not. I mean,
I mean, that's something we can look at. Yeah,
perfectly reasonable to me. If you're trying to eliminate crossings, the less crossing events we have, the better it is.
Sure.
I mean, we can study. We can definitely.
Yeah, we absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even if it requires a retaining wall, I mean, that's not the end of the world.
Anything. I don't think a retaining wall in that section is going to kill the budget. Like,
no, I agree. Yeah.
It's not, I mean, if it's for safety, that's easy to justify. It's much easier to make that change than the Naval Academy bridge. That segment is just, when you double the budget, that's a harder sell. But just a small segment where you might need a retaining wall, if it's for safety, that's easy to justify.
Yeah, that's
sorry
definitely something we can look at.
Interrupt. This is Brian in the mayor's office. Vince, just so you know, from the other side of the Severn River, the county is working on the separated dedicated path up to where the B&A trail begins. I'm just not sure where it is. This might get done before that, but it is in the works.
No, I realize that. It's just that in that interim, if we're creating a hazard, that concerns me.
Yep.
All right, where are we in the presentation?
Just going to go over the schedule as of right now. As Luis said, we're not even to 30% design here. So we have the two alternatives that I showed in the presentation, and those we're working towards a stormwater review the beginning of next year. We also are in the process of bringing on a new design consultant. The consultants that did the design.
How are you? Everybody else is fighting. I'm on a fucking Zoom meeting. That was me this morning I was trying to duck hunt in a meeting.
Hey, Charles, you might want to mute there. There we go.
All right.
Don't they know that we're in a fucking meeting?
So I was saying we're also in the process of bringing on board new designers. The designers that did the work up to this point, contract has run out, so we're anticipating bringing them on board early in 2024, and they will continue on with the 30% design into the spring, 65% in the end of 2024, early 2025, 90%. Fall of 2025, advertisement late 2026, and construction, I think they should say 2025, sorry. And then construction in summer 2026. This is just tentative schedule, just to give you guys kind of an idea of where things stand. So we'll develop these alternatives to 30%, and at 30%, one alternative will be chosen to move forward with the input of all the stakeholders and everyone that we've been meeting with. We'll move that one alternative forward. We won't carry two alternatives beyond the 30% design. And then any more questions or comments?
I'm sorry, could you just go back to that
Sure.
timeline? So what is the drop dead date for when this gets solidified?
I don't know that there's a drop dead date right now. This is just kind of I guess I'll say tentative schedule or
3 years
overview
out.
schedule.
Looks like we're 3 years out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant to decide on alternative, not when construction would start.
Well, everything's fluid till then, right?
Mm-hmm.
One remark, I think the last thing any of us want to do is to retard the project by any of these new options that might come up. Full speed ahead by all means. On the other hand, if there are enhancements that many agree would make sense, even if they cost a lot more money, I think they should be flagged and lobbied for as add-ons. And I'm talking about possible changes to the bridge itself. One of the options, for example, you don't necessarily have to add concrete. You could subtract concrete from both of the sidewalks and add a physical barrier and still meet your AASHTO requirements for lane width and so forth. I know there are going to be mechanical engineering constraints as to what you can do and how much weight you can put in new places on the bridge, and they must all be taken into account properly. But if we can get markedly increased safety out of a final project, I think we should be pushing in that direction. Although not to retard the plans that you have in place already for the other segments. Any other remarks?
I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to come on. Besides that one intersection where you possibly could eliminate two crossings and turn it into one, I think that for possibly not a lot of more engineering. I feel like that should probably take a look at.
Absolutely.
And then I understand the requirements you have, but yeah, anything you could do to include the bridge. It doesn't sound like there's much more that could be done for the hardening, but anything you can do to look at it just because of the speed limit on the bridge, very much appreciated for me personally.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. We've looked into it in more detail than we have in the past, and it's very helpful.
Sure, and we appreciate your guys' input, and we're definitely going to take a look at trying to get this to stay within our constraints, but get it as best as we can for you guys as well.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. It's really good to be able to have this discussion. It's really helpful for us to get your feedback and be able to accommodate as much as we can. I mean, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to get everyone into a safer situation. It's just sometimes we have to choose what can we do within the constraints that we have. But we really appreciate the opportunity.
I hope we'll hear something later in this meeting from Karma O'Neill, our alderwoman from Ward 2, who was a part of a delegation traveling from Annapolis and Anne Arundel County to the Netherlands 2 weeks ago. There, the situation is quite different. The funding priority for safe bicycle infrastructure is markedly higher than it is here in this country generally, and I think in Maryland specifically. And it's very clear that they have made quite different priority judgments about where the funds will flow. Now, I appreciate the constraints that you face in funding bicycle infrastructure, but I do point out that other governments make other choices, and we want to urge our governments to move in that direction. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.
If there's nothing else, I'll move on to our regular agenda. You're welcome to stay around as long as you like. So I'll go back to the original
Kurt, could I just
agenda.
ask, Matt,
Sure.
are you sharing that presentation? Because I think in particular, the schematic on the proposals were quite helpful. And I think I didn't detail them in the minutes. I think the picture is worth more than me writing it up, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, could you send that along to us? The
Thanks, Matt.
PowerPoint or whatever it is?
Yep, I can do that.
Terrific. Okay, thanks so much. Well, we have called the meeting to order. The agenda was distributed to you, and we have already departed from it. My apologies, but I think it was for good cause. Could I have a motion to approve our agenda as we proceed? Okay, Vince. And I saw a second from Hugh. All in favor?
Aye.
I see a majority. The next item is minutes. Minutes, thanks to Tara, were developed and distributed to you today. So you have minutes of the last two meetings, which are before you. They look fine to me. If there are any suggested changes, let us know. Otherwise, I'll take a motion for approval of the minutes of the last two meetings. Okay, second? Let's see a second. All in favor? Thank you so much. We have no public participation apart from that we just had that I'm aware of. The next item on the agenda is Alderwoman Karma O'Neill, who will have things to say about general transportation activities in the city, and maybe we'll touch on this Netherlands experience, which we all envy you for.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Yes, generally speaking, the city did do their report on the Netherlands trip. There was all attendees reports the Friday before last. And then we did another abbreviated version of that report at last week's Transportation Committee meeting for the city on Wednesday. It was a great trip. It was a awesome learning opportunity, I think. And I believe that Director Marcus Moore would agree that we were able to see things in practice that we've been talking about. And I think that was the most important part of the trip, was that we could see all of the work that the Netherlands have done for their stormwater management and their flood resistance capabilities. And then some takeaways are there. I asked Director Moore for his top 3 ideas that he could put into action within the next year. And one of them is increasing biking opportunities, by adding bike lanes, connecting bike lanes where there's some disconnect in the city, and working on integrating more pervious surface parking lots in new development and existing development. Those were the top 2 we discussed. There was some more. We're really working on making public transportation less of, I'm going to say need-based, and more of everybody-based, so that it's seen as something that's more positive and not you only use public transportation if you have no other options. Really, we're going to push for public transportation to be a viable option, whether you have a car or not. And that means really increasing the microtransit initiative that Marcus Moore has started, and hopefully will be implemented in the next 4 months. And then increasing the frequency of some of our most popular bus lines so that people can actually use it to move throughout the city and not, take a bus and have to wait for an hour for a transfer or wait for 30 minutes for a transfer. So they're really taking a good hard look at that. And the transportation department has been reviewing, has been surveying, we took a ride, part of the council, Alderwoman Pindell Charles and Alderman Savage and myself took a ride on 5 of the bus routes one day right before Thanksgiving, and did some transfers and talked with people that were on the bus and got a lot of great ideas. So we are working really steadily to improve the city's public transportation, which will soon include options for, better biking options, as we just had that presentation on. And, it's going to take a little while, and it's a change from what we've been doing so far, but I think that we're moving in the right direction. That's no pun intended. A couple of other things that I am working on as the chair of the Transportation Committee. I have asked our Public Works to give a presentation, which will take place at our February meeting. I believe it's like February 12th, around that date. I'll have to look at it for sure. And they're going to give a presentation on all of the capital improvement projects in the FY24 budget that pertain to transportation and parking all over the city. I believe there's 14 projects that they're going to give us an update on, where we are in that process and what the projected timeline for completion of each of those projects. So that'll be in February. In January, we are meeting again with Premium Parking to talk about the changes that we're going to make in Noah Hillman Garage due to the issues that we've had since it opened. One of the things that Marcus Moore has been working on is taking the public comments that have been coming in and improving. One of the things that's being improved is they're changing from that 14-digit 2-hour free parking code to something much more manageable for people. And it's just a matter of changing some of the coding. So they're working on that. And then they're working heavily on the residential parking process. Marcus Moore and I came back from the Netherlands with some really great ideas on how to better manage our residential parking. When we talked with a director of parking and Kurt knows the city I'm talking about, the one I can't say.
That city is Scheveningen.
Yes, which is a city that has an underground parking garage about 100 meters from the sea, which was pretty amazing. But it also had street parking very similar to Annapolis, and they had structured their street parking in a way that was much easier for the residents to manage. Talking about possibly putting in what we'll call a bank. So instead of so many vouchers per month that you have to go in and tediously put in a code for, you'll have a bank of hours so your guests can come park. So that's just one thing that will be rolled out, the details of which will happen, again, like I said, in our January Transportation Committee meeting. So all in a nutshell, those are the 3 things that we're working on from the city side for transportation.
Thanks so much. It's a concise and very helpful accounting of what's going on. Yeah, as you saw, the Dutch have a slightly different history from ours and have made different priority decisions. But I'm glad to see that we are moving in that direction because I think it will be helpful.
Great.
All right, next
Can I just add one thing to that, Kurt?
Yeah.
And that is that Dutch and many other European countries, cities, jurisdictions, in many of those locations, these improvements and movements are not that old. If you look at photos of the Netherlands in the 70s, you would see something that looked like Manhattan throughout. Like it was a nightmare of traffic and congestion. And these improvements happened very quickly and with a deep commitment from both the authorities having jurisdiction and the citizens. And I would just say that the one thing I think that when you travel to a place like Amsterdam that you notice and that makes it work is that the commitment is deep and wide, right? And it's comprehensive. And what I think that we as a country, as a state, as a city here can focus more on is that type of comprehensive big thinking, because these little piecemeal, even like we're talking about how much it's going to cost to move the crosswalk 50 feet on this one piece, and we're still not talking about where it connects literally on the other side of that same bridge. That seems to me problematic. So I just want to say that as amazing as it is to go to a place like the Netherlands and see how deep and comprehensive their system is, it's really not old. It's very, very new, relatively, and it can be achieved with commitment and with a comprehensive vision. So,
Vince, I want to
most people here know
that. I want to emphasize exactly that point. I was living in the Netherlands in the mid to late 70s, and they had, a couple of decades before, gone through the Second World War. They were emerging from it. They looked at the United States and our automobile culture and said, hey, we want that, and started building roads to beat the band all over the Netherlands. But it became clear that that had huge costs in human and financial and safety terms. And there was, as you say, a national revulsion over and a conscious decision to take a different course. And they made funding decisions and regulatory decisions that set the stage for investments in infrastructure. And as I like to point out, if you build it, they will come. If you make safe bicycle infrastructure, the culture will change and people will use it. We have safe automobile culture, and people use our safe infrastructure in automobiles because it is safe for cars. It's not safe for bicycles, and I hope we can change that. Beth?
Yes, Karma, my system blocked up when you were talking, and I only got a very little of that last part, number 3, about the residential parking. changing the vouchers per month to banking hours per month or something like that. Can you repeat that a little bit just for me?
Sure. It's a part of the parking changes that Premium and Marcus Moore have been talking about. And we put forth the idea that when we were then in the Netherlands, there was a city parking, and residential permitting, that instead of doing like so many vouchers per month that you had to, remember and use, it was a yearly bank. In the Netherlands, it was 500 euros for the year. And you could use those in any increment that you wanted to for a 1 hour guest or an 8 hour guest or a multi-day guest. And so Premium Parking is working on their app and changing their coding so that something like that could be possible. And they are planning to present at our January meeting with more details on that. That's just a little tickler.
Well, that makes
That's
so much
okay.
sense.
When
A
is
bank
the
account that
January?
you can draw on in whatever increments work for you makes a lot
You
more
did
sense.
pick up on her
Well,
saying 500 euros a year, which would be significantly more than the token $35 or $50 we pay for our annual permit in districts 1 and 2, right? You heard
Well,
that.
and nobody's saying that. I don't think she's saying she's going to charge 500 euros. That's just what they do, right, Karma?
Right. Yeah,
And
that's what they have
their
a
system.
500 euro bank, basically. So where we have, is it 12
It's
passes
10 a month.
per month? 10,
It's
10 per month. Yes. So as part of your residential fee, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
Instead of the 10 per month that could be rollover or whatnot, then it's this bank that you can use in any way you want.
like 50 hours a month or something, and then you count off the hours as you
That
use
seems
it.
like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It really does. And
It
they
does.
just really need to figure out the way to rewrite the code to reflect that and, figure out the details of that. Obviously, when I said 500 euros, that's what, $550 or $575. That's, I don't think the dollar amount or the euro amount is the important part. It's the important part is that Premium is looking at ways to simplify for the residential parking, the process, because they've heard loud and clear, Beth, you, and the other residents that have come forward saying, this is ridiculous. We have to go in at 5 o'clock for our guest that's staying overnight, and then tomorrow at 5:10 because of the way the system is set up. And
it's tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Okay,
so we have a whole hour where they can get a parking ticket.
Right.
Yeah, I think, Carmen, if I may, it would be a perfectly usable system if you could say, I have someone here for 7 days, and so let me just block the 7 days and don't make me come in tomorrow at 5 and the next day at 5 and every single day at 5.
Yeah,
which we're pushing towards. Yes,
right.
we're pushing
I would say
towards.
that's the particular limitation of the system.
Yeah,
and I need to wait for my guests to arrive in order for the clock to tick. Versus me saying, I've got 10 people coming on Thanksgiving. Let me book 10 people from 5 to 9. It doesn't allow for that foresight. That's really the limitation.
Right. So we're working on that. And I think that people will be pleased when they roll it out in January.
But in terms of accessibility and the number of hours I'm provided and the capacity I provided, I find no issue. It's really more.
Well, you might not, but if you had 4 children coming to visit you periodically, you'd find that 10 parking tickets a month isn't enough. But that's beside the point. Having hours that you can use in the increments of hours. So you have someone come visit for an hour, and then you have someone else come for 2 hours, and then someone else for 4 or 5 or whatever. Increments like that does make a lot more sense as to how you use your parking. And so that just sounds like it's certainly a step in the right direction as for what needs to be done.
Thank you. The clock is wearing on. I'd like to get back to the agenda if we could.
Certainly.
We did the bridge topic. That was very good. We as a board submitted our comments on the pedestrian crosswalk suggested for Duke of Gloucester. And we also provided our formal comments on two parking ordinances. So those are out of the way, and we are at the point in the agenda where we have an opportunity to bring up new business, which I will do just by going around the table if I can. And according to my list here, Tom, is Tom here? Tom is not here.
No.
No. John Giannetti is not here. David DeQuinzio is next.
Right away. Just based off previous
None for me tonight, thanks.
All right. Vince?
None for me, just apologize for my language earlier.
Yes. You are forgiven.
Thank you.
Edward Bergman. Ed, are you there? I think he stepped away for a moment. I'll come back at you. And Zoe?
Nothing for me.
All right, Tara?
What happened to Hugh Hayes?
I don't have any
Yes,
new
yeah,
business, but Kurt, we responded to ordinances 3023 and 3123, and then did both of Hugh's recommendations get posted?
No.
Recap for me what you just said.
No, we did the crosswalk, but we have not sent in anything formally just yet on the bridge. And I thought as a result of this meeting, we could make any tweaks that we want to that original thing that you developed, Hughes, and then finalize it. Does that make sense? Okay. That's what we're planning to do. So the one remaining action item is a statement by the board on the bridge portion of the trail project. Anything else that we want to say? And Hugh, why don't you and I work on finalizing something to circulate? And then
Do you mean the bridge projects that we started the meeting with?
yes.
I would say that I don't want to mission creep and keep expanding it, but something for Matt and Louise to think of is moving those crossings to Annapolis Street.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100 yards. There's the railroad path right of way, and then there's the backside of the water tower and some Naval Academy property where that steep embankment is.
Good.
If you moved it all the way to Annapolis Street, you would have to probably change the signaling at Annapolis Street, but it would be infinitely safer for people to have a protected path for that additional 100 yards so that you're not crossing, you're also not impacting traffic at the King George Street intersection.
Vince, could you and Hugh work on language for our statement?
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about, Hugh?
Okay, good. And then I did skip over.
Sorry, this is Matt. I just was I was still listening in. So you don't want to have a crossing at all across the Maryland 450 King George intersection?
Well, what Hugh was suggesting was that by bringing it south and east another 50 or 80 feet, whatever it is, it's a very wide intersection, that you would reduce the crossings to one there, right? You would make a left there, and you would only cross 435, and you wouldn't cross King George. What I'm saying is if you moved it north and west, approximately 100 yards to Annapolis Street, you would eliminate all of that, and you would make a much, much safer shared use path, because you wouldn't be crossing anywhere near the speeds are lower. I mean, everything about it would be much, much safer.
Go ahead.
I would still keep it at King George. But I would eliminate, like my personal preference, I would eliminate since there's not two crossings there and there's just one by extending it a little further north into that hill. because of the rest of the stuff that the city is planning on doing with the College Creek connector. That's going to be the main route going to the College Creek connector. Then that ties into the West East Express. So I still think there should be a crossing there, just not two. And I think it's not a huge lift from our part saying, hey, just move it across the intersection.
Oh, no, that's definitely something we're going to look at for sure. I would, yeah, like you were saying, I was worried if we move it all the way to Annapolis Street, people are still going to want to go left and go down King George. Even if we took that crossing away, nobody's going to go up to Annapolis Street and come back down and around to go down King George. I wouldn't think.
Oh, I see.
I mean, what you're saying is certainly safer, but I don't know that people are going to go all the way up to Annapolis Street, come back down the other way to go down King George.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And
we'd probably still have to have something there for pedestrians to cross at King George. And then if we do that, the bikes are just going to do the same thing.
Got it.
Okay, Hugh and Vince.
We can talk.
Okay, terrific. And Hugh, did you have anything else you wanted to cover?
Nothing else.
All right. Edward, are you back? No. Let's see, where were we? Have we done Zoe yet? Yeah.
Yep, I didn't have anything to update.
Right. Taylor?
Nada, nothing.
Beth?
Yes, I do have something I want to bring up. I did send a message out today, but it was late. And so it was a response on Kurt's message. So you may not have paid any attention to it. But it deals with residential parking, the changes that were made for us because of the garage and how difficult it is for residents in the parking area. Karma alluded to it. And one of the things that we are as a group supposed to look at is parking. And we have not done that much, if any, in the past couple of years. So I would like to actually put it off based on Karma's comments. But it is difficult for the residents in districts 1, 2 only for parking, since they made all these major changes dealing with the garage and the city dock and all that. But, and one of the things, so the next meeting, our next meeting will be after, I'm assuming, Karma, will be after premium parking comes forth with any changes that they're looking at, that you're looking at with them. And so depending on whatever that is, I would like to bring up the transportation board looking at residential parking and in districts 1 and 2 only, and working on making it better for residents. I just want to tell you that we don't have the ability we don't have 2-hour free parking for guests anymore. We we get 10 parking tickets a month, and 10 for many people is just not enough. I mean, just imagine, that it just isn't. And you can't bank them like you used to be able to do. If I don't use my 10, I can, bank them for the next month. You can't do that. It's 10, 10, 10, period, 10 that you get a month. If you don't use them, they go away. And we don't have the ability to have a long-term, someone come to visit us for the long term and be able to buy parking passes for them, such as you may be sick, you may have had surgery, you may need your sister or your brother to come and stay with you for a month or so. And of course, and they're going to have their own car. You have no way to buy a parking pass for a long term for that person. And it's just very frustrating. So there's a lot of things that need to be changed, but I'm going to wait on that until next month and see what changes come up with premium parking and with the transportation committee.
Thanks, Beth.
Just forewarning that I'm going to
Mhm.
look at trying to do something.
Good.
With the board.
Charles, it's a delight to see you here. Are you, do you have anything you'd like to say?
I have no business.
Okay. You're still in Annapolis. Is there anything you'd like to say about how permanent we hope you will stay with us?
I'm still in Ward 6, but I don't know where I'm going to be.
Okay, well, good
I'll
luck.
post it.
Good luck. And I have nothing further myself too. So if that is it, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thanks to all and have a happy holiday.
Everybody, yes, happy
Thank you.
holiday.
Kurt,
Yes.
actually, one thing, I think our next meeting is on Martin Luther King Day.
We'll have to move it then.
Yeah, so it's a federal holiday, so we just
Yeah.
wanted to point that out.
Thanks. Yeah, this has happened before. We'll
Yeah,
just move it a day or whatever we have to do.
okay, I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks.
Hmm.
Goodbye, all.